Okay, I've been putting this I've been making this video off for about 2 weeks since I've been here, and it's probably going to take me about 20, 30 minutes, 30 minutes probably, because I can talk. And I'm going to talk about my recovery um, from alcoholism, dysfunctional families, and all the rest of it. And the reason I want to do that is because I've kind of come a little bit full circle with certain stuff. When I came to visit the UK, what was it, about 4 or 5 weeks ago now, I even ended up going back to Penfold Road, the house I was born in, and the guy actually let me in there to go and have a look around. It was quite weird. Um, and I've done a lot of reflection recently because I've not been so well, and nothing life-threatening, but enough to knock me for six and send me up to 16 stone in weight, and I'm only 5 foot 7.5. I'll cling on to that half. I haven't written anything down, so if I mix my words up, I don't care. There's nothing written in front of me. I'll just talk, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of an outlook on what we do in this fellowship that I've been part of for the last 18 years, well, since 2007. And you'll know that fellowship as being AA. I don't care if there's anybody watching this that's in AA and they think, oh, he's breaking tradition by mentioning AA at the level of press, radio, and film. Well, them times have changed, haven't they? Because AA gets mentioned in lots of different dramas that you see on the BBC and other different channels. So I'm not breaking any tradition, I don't think. And besides, if anybody gets anything from this little chat that I'm going to give you for 30 minutes, then that's the whole point. A lot of people that know me and have known me all my school life, I suppose, know that my family life was dysfunctional, and everybody drank. My parents, my mum and my real father, Bruce, drank. My grandparents drank, and whether I can say they were alcoholic or not, I can, because I was there. I experienced it. So maybe I won't, but I could. And so my upbringing, the very first part of it was very toxic, dysfunctional. Alcohol and drugs are involved, and my mum divorced my real father when I was about 3, and I went back to the family home when my grandparents were when I was 3, 4, I guess, and I have memories of that time, and they weren't very nice, and my mum held down a job. Um, my mum was some kind of nurse at Royal Vic, and my grandparents worked at sea in the Merchant Navy down the docks, and I think my nan worked at a place called Bobby's. I think it was in Debenhams, and they used to like a drink. I realised that Father Christmas didn't exist when my milk turned into a Bacardi instead of the milk became a Bacardi over time, and I realised that that's what my nan and granddad drank. Um, but I kind of, even at that age, 4, 5, nothing was right for me. Um, there was something wrong with everything. It wasn't self-centered, non-appreciative stuff. I just, nothing was right. It was like a square peg in a round hole, and which is a common phrase in the rooms. Nothing was right. My food weren't right. My friends weren't right. My school weren't right. My family weren't right. My clothes weren't right. Everything. There was always something that didn't feel right. It was kind of like the malady that we say in AA is I was restless, irritable, and discontented all the time. Nothing was right, and I always felt on edge, felt different, felt on the outside. Even though people used to come and knock on my door and ask me to come out, I didn't think I was part of anything. It felt really strange. And coupled with that, I had the drinking that was going on within my family. And when I was around 7, my mum met a guy called Steve, and they got married. And I was 7 or 8 at the time. And I remember when I used to come out of George Spurgeon School, I used to wonder how my mum was going to be when she's picking me up. Oh, it was a fucking nightmare, because you had all the parents at the gate, the mums and the dads picking us all up from school, and I'd be full of different emotions. I'd be kind of worried. I'd be anxious. I'd be embarrassed. I'd be angry. I'd have pity on my mum because everyone was laughing at her because she could hardly fucking stand up, and that's the way it was. And then Steve was a great guy, and not long after my mum got with Steve, um, my mum had another baby, and that was Troy, the eldest out of my 2 other brothers, and and my mum's drinking escalated and escalated and escalated. Steve used to play football and he used to play rugby, very, very good at both. Extremely popular with Rugby Football Club and Folkestone Sports Centre, and he used to do the reffing down in the Marine Pavilion. I remember he used to take me down there, he used to sit up at the table, feel a little bit special. But suddenly Steve's friends used to disappear, it all started to go, it changed. I remember it all changing, and there was less time that we'd spend with them, less time people would come round to us. Mum and Steve would be invited to less and less places, and this was because of my mum's drinking. And bless her cottons, she didn't know about AA. I'm not too sure what the score was of her, I was too young. But when my mum was heavily pregnant with Troy, I remember that my grandparents were sneaking in Bacardi and Coke bottles to my mum. And I remember my mum was in a different room because she had complications with the birth of Troy. That was obviously down to alcohol. But cut a long story short, you know, my other brother Ashley, he came along 2 years later, and we moved up to Hawkinge, and a couple of Steve's sisters lived up. No, one of Steve's sisters lived up there, and I was a little fucker. I was a little terror, and my mum's drinking was off a scale. My mum used to go walking around the estate, knocking on people's doors and all sorts of stuff. Ended up in the cemetery. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. I've never seen anything like it. And so I grew up not wanting to be indoors. I didn't want to be indoors because it was just toxic. It was volatile. That's quite a heavy word, but it was volatile. The amount of shouting and the way it was horrendous. And Steve had to put up with it. We all put up with it because, as anybody that knows that's lived in and around dysfunction or alcohol especially, it touches everybody. It's a bit like a pebble in a pond, isn't it? If you throw a pebble in the pond, the ripples of that pebble touch all sides of the swimming pool. I say swimming pool because there's one here. So it's just like alcohol. Alcohol touches everybody, not just the direct family, but the friends, everybody. It affects everybody. And anybody that's been in and around problem drinkers will know what I'm talking about. And so I was kind of fighting a bit of a twofold battle, really. I was battling what I believe my own alcoholism, even though I hadn't had a drink yet, because I had the isms of alcoholism, that restless, irritable and discontented feeling, and the problems that were going on at home. And this just continued and continued. I just took myself off. I was always out and about on my bike. Those that know me from Hawkinge would know that. And yeah, it was quite horrendous, to say the least. And then I ended up going to secondary school, and my behaviour I didn't fall into the wrong crowd, but I just fell into a crowd that were, how can we say, some of them are going to see this video. we were naughty, and I fell into that crowd, and I went along with it because I could, and I never liked going home, and so that was the way it was. And going back a little bit, I remember the first time I got pissed actually was in 1977, and I remember it. It was at the Silver Jubilee party down Penfold Road, and I went round picking up everybody's drinks because my mum's sister's husband Barry. He was in a band, and there was a band there. And I remember them finding me slumped on the stairs at number 30 Penfold Road, pissed out of my nut at 6. Of course, I didn't remember the effects of that, but that was my first ever time being drunk. And then there was another time in Hawkins when I got drunk on Cinzano at someone's house when we were babysitting, aged 10. And I remember I remember not being scared of the dark when I had to walk back home because I was drunk. And then there was the other time in Hawkins when I got pissed when Man United were it was the FA Cup final, and me and a friend called Darren, we were babysitting again, and we opened up the drinks cabinet and we got drunk. We must have been 10 or 11, so this would have been around 1981, 1982. Any Man United fans might remember that. I can't remember. And I remember going home really drunk. I was 10, maybe 11, and I was extremely violently ill. And I remember being violently sick in my bedroom, and I went downstairs not knowing what to do because I couldn't stop drinking. I remember my mum dragging me up the stairs by my hair and fucking rubbing my face in it and beating me and smashing me and being really angry because I was spewing everywhere. Any normal parent would have maybe taken you to the hospital to find out what was going on. But obviously my mum was drunk too. So there's a lot of people that say that, well, your mum did the best she could because she was drinking and she was drunk and she didn't know what to do herself. But you have to remember there's still a little boy. There's still a little boy there, the inner child. And so that doesn't take that away. Anyway, my drinking kicked off when I was around 15, 16. And I was kicked out of the house. I was so bad by Steve at 15. And incidentally, this might cut out this video because I don't know how long it's going to last. So I best speed it up a little bit. I was kicked out of the house, and then when I was 18, a lot of people would know Steve was killed down a Channel Tunnel. And that was on the 21st of April 1990 on a Saturday morning about 10:15. I remember all that because it was quite vivid. It was quite a terrible thing that happened. Troy and Ashley were 10 and 8. My mum was drinking like you wouldn't believe, a couple of bottles of Bacardi a day. So you can imagine what sort of behaviour and dysfunction comes with that while that's going on in the house. And then I moved back to the family home in Fleming Way to try and hold things together a little bit. But it wasn't very easy. I was dealing with my own issues at this time. I was smoking a lot of weed, drinking alcohol, but not an alcoholic way. Actually, maybe I was. But it didn't go down too well, and I ended up going to prison because I smashed up the family home in frustration and anger and all the rest of it because I'd been caught for drink driving. And I breached the suspended sentence by smashing up the home, and so I went to prison. That was my first time in jail. And then what came with that was me going completely off the rails. So from 19 onwards, I was just drinking, moving around, drinking, girlfriend after girlfriend, and apartment after apartment. Losing girlfriends, but working continuously. I was always working, and then one time I was in a long relationship with a girl called Sally, and who I've since apologised to, by the way. And bless her, she went through it for about 4 years, and I think it was around 1996 I got a job on this hotel on the Epsom Road in Surrey as a trainee bar and restaurant manager, and that's when it kicked off. That's when it really kicked off for me. I started morning drinking My first morning drink was a bottle of Rioja up on the electric pylon. I was into my photography and I wanted to take some pictures of the sunrise with a bottle of red wine. And from that day, I'll never forget that day. And from that time, I never looked back. And I used the alcohol because I knew that it would take away the anxiety. Believe it or not, I had anxiety about around people and serving them drinks and being a trainee function room manager, where I had to meet and greet and talk to people at close range. So I would be drinking all the time, and I inevitably lost that job. I had a punch up with a chef called Colin, and got involved with another girl called Julia. She got accepted at Sheffield University, and so in 1998 I ended up going up to I ended up moving to Sheffield, where she was at Sheffield Hallam University, and she got to realise just how much I was drinking, and didn't last very long before we broke up. And hold on a minute, I'm going to pause this. Where was I? Sheffield. Okay, I had to move because someone came and sat down next to me. So I ended up in Sheffield, and Julia found out just how much I was drinking, so we broke up. But I continued to stay in Sheffield, and that's when I found my recreational drug use. I met a guy called Benny, and I started doing block paving and construction. I needed to drink every day at this point. When was this? Would have been around 1998, 1999, and whilst I was doing the block paving outside the Sheffield Hallam University, which was just across the road from the Crucible Theatre, when they went for breakfast, I used to need to go and find an off licence so I could have a drink, because I was starting to shake, and obviously people would know that what was going on. They probably knew anyway, but I would have been stopped from working because I was using steel saws, driving dumpers down the road, driving excavators, all whilst I was drunk. And but that kind of felt normal to me. My drinking at this point, and the reason I was drinking like that was because I had to. So that was, like I say, I think 1998, 99. And then one day I was at work with my boss, and he said to me, "Why are you staying in Sheffield?" I said, "I don't know, I'm quite enjoying the nightlife." And me and Benny used to go out on a Friday and come back on a Monday, peeled out of our faces. I don't know whatever else they were giving me, but it enabled me to drink more, so it didn't really matter. I went along with it. And one day Andy just threw the keys to the caddy at me and said, "Go and get your stuff and move to Birmingham with us," because I used to travel up from Birmingham every day. And on that Saturday morning, I got 2 bags of my stuff, two black bags, and I moved. And in the afternoon, I was in Birmingham. And he sorted out some digs for me to stay at this guy called Kevin's place. I think it was 35 quid a week, and I just had to pay for my food. And do you know what? I couldn't even afford to pay that, because I was spending every single penny on Diamond White. And I was drinking Diamond White because it was more than 7.5%. I think it was 8.6% then. And I didn't think it was alcoholic because they served it on draft in the pub. And that's the other reason I drank the other K cider as well, because that was really strong and couldn't possibly be alcoholic because they served it in pubs. And that's who and what I was. And I spent a long time in Birmingham, lived with a girl called Christine, a woman called Christine, should I say, and her 2 kids. And upset the apple cart there as well. And I ended up coming back to Folkestone around 2000 because my real father, I'd met Bruce back in 99, and met Bruce in 1999, and we went on this trip on the Norfolk Broads. I think my mum paid for it, or my Aunt Liz, I'm not too sure. Someone paid for it, got us together, which was quite a thing. I really wanted to meet him and to get to know him. So we did this trip in '99. I'm going to do this quite a lot, maybe, go backwards and forwards, you know, because like I said, I haven't got anything written down. And we went on this trip, and I thought it was funny. Two people that were, Bruce was in a very bad way. You could tell he was ill, and I was just off my face, smoking weed and drinking like you wouldn't believe. And but unfortunately, he died. We was going to have our first Christmas together. 1999. This was not 1990. That was when Steve died. 1999, and we were going to have our first ever Christmas, but he died, and he died of alcoholism, very shitty, painful, horrible death, and that was on Christmas Eve he died. So that one will stay. That's why I never normally have a very good Christmas, but that's the way it was. And I moved back to Kent, and I moved back to his flat for a little while. Then I was told I wasn't allowed to stay there. Then my real father's sister Liz, she paid for a deposit on a little cottage in the village, so I stayed there. But of course I ruined that. I was drinking far too much, and I had to leave there because I ended up threatening quite a well-known gangster from London, a nephew of this gangster. I believe he was from the Richardsons. You might have heard of them. And I threatened him with a steel saw with a diamond blade on it, and I had to leave very quickly. And I went back to Birmingham. I wasn't really seen or accepted very well back in Birmingham, so I came back to Folkestone. And that would have been around 2000 time. But I'd say from 2000 to 2006, my blackout was extremely severe. Very, very severe. I mean, I could go and pick people up from work, and then at the end of the day, go and ask the guy what time we're going to leave, and he said, "Well, you should know that. You brought us here," and I wouldn't have remembered that I even drove them. I couldn't even find the van. That's how bad my drinking was. I was drinking in alleyways. I was drinking in public toilets. I was drinking behind the bushes in Kingsnorth Gardens. None of you lot knew that. Well, you might have done. But I didn't. If you did, I didn't know that you knew. And I'd got to a point in my life where the unacceptable in all areas of my life had become acceptable. It didn't matter. All that mattered was the bottle. It really didn't matter. And I didn't know that I didn't know what I was doing, if you can understand what I just said. I didn't know I didn't know. So how could I do anything about it? But I was living in this place of, I'll put it this way, I was disappointed every morning I woke up. But I didn't want to wake up because I knew I'd have to do the whole shebang all over again for the next day. Struggled to find out where I was going to get the next money from to go and get the next drink. But I always did, and I always got a job. I always managed to go out and get a job. Back then you could walk onto sites and go and get a job, couldn't you? And I was absolutely petrified of everything. And I'm really hoping that anybody that's got any difficulty with drinking or life, or that's identified with what I've said so far, understands what I'm talking about. And I kind of knew about AA. I knew I was an alcoholic, for sure. Absolutely I did. But why did I need to change it? I didn't have any kids, I weren't married. I could go and get a bit of skirt, as I called it then, whenever I wanted. Completely, totally and utterly self-centred to the extreme, because I needed to be, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to sustain the amount of drinking that I was doing to keep me from having another fit, because I'd had 3 alcoholic fits. And an alcoholic fit is brought on when your alcohol levels and sugar levels drop so much that the body can't handle it and it goes into shock and you have a seizure. And that is the most dangerous seizure you can have, worse than epilepsy. And so I needed to be topped up all the time, whether I had a job or not, whether I had any money in the bank or not. So I was stealing alcohol. And at this point, come around mid 2000s, mid 2004, 2005, I'd been to prison another 3 times for drink driving. Not funny at all. And you know, every time I got caught and every time I come out of jail, I was going to be different. It was always going to be different. I was going to do this, I was going to do that, I was going to get myself right. And I'd take that gyro from the prison and I'd go straight to the off licence and get pissed. And within 2 days I was back to where I started. I think what I'm going to do now is just cut to the chase to my last 6 months of my drinking, because this has been going for 26 minutes. The last 6 months of my drinking, I found myself living down in Greatstone. I had a Renault Safran and I had a little motorbike, 125, I don't know what you call it, a monkey bike, but it was a Peugeot. I always remember it was a Peugeot. And this morning I was working down in Canberra. And if anyone knows the Canberra road, it's not a very safe road, especially in the dark when it's raining. It's icy. It was fucking terrible weather, and I fell off. And the road's kind of like on a Canberra. If you know the Canberra road, there's the road drops off on a bank, and there's houses on the grass at the bottom. And I crashed this bike, and I was just laying there. And you know what, I couldn't even be asked to move, and even though I saw the lights coming from the other way from a car or a truck or whatever it was, and I managed to get to my feet, and I'm standing there trying to straighten the handlebars, pissing down with rain. I'll never forget this day as long as I live. It was pissing down with rain, and a guy had come out of his house, and he walked up the bank, and he just shouted across to me, "Are you okay, mate?" And I just looked over to him and I went, "Fuck off." I just looked at him and just gave him a completely disrespectful fuck off. I finished straightening up the handlebars and I rode down to, it was near Pontins, the site where I was working. I finished my last can of Supertenants. I progressed to Supertenants. It tasted nicer and I could drink it quicker, especially when it's warm. And I just suddenly realised that I just spoke to that bloke with complete disrespect, disdain, and without thought that he only wanted to ask how I was, because I just nearly got killed by a car on the road. And I found myself a week later driving to work in the Safran this time, which the heater didn't work, so I had my head literally out the window so I could see where I'm driving. And I pulled the car over. It was somewhere near Lydd Airport, and I called the police. I called the police on myself. They came. They asked me what the problem was because they couldn't tell that I'd been drinking. And I said, "Can you breathalyse me?" He looked at me right, really, really oddly, like I had 10 heads or something. And obviously I failed the breath test. He took me to Ashford to blow into the big machine, and I blew 249. Now, I don't know if any of you know that the legal limit's 35. I was 7 times over, and yet I could walk any white line. I could stand on one leg. I could talk to you like I could talk to them like I'm talking to you now. And I said to him, I said, "I'm normal, I'm fine." And I'll never forget him saying to me, "That's far from normal, Paul." And the reason I share that is because that was a defining moment for me. And I really wanted to, I'd had enough. And I knew that they'd put me back in prison, and that had been my 4th time in jail, 5th time convicted of the same offence, and I'd get a detox for 3 weeks on the hospital wing or whatever it was at Stanford Hill, and that was the plan, and it worked. So I'm in jail, and I come out of jail, and my Aunt Liz picked me up with her daughter Issa, and I remember my cousin had a camera with her because I really wanted to start up photography, or so I thought. and I was going to be the next David Bailey, and I was staying in this hostel in Canterbury, and I chose Canterbury because there was a couple of universities there and I could kind of mix in with all that stuff, even though I didn't have the qualifications to do any of that. They dropped me off, they drove off. I walked into the kitchen and a guy said to me, "You've just been in prison for 3 months." I went, "Yeah." He said, "Here, do you want a beer?" I had 1 bottle of Budweiser, and within 1 day I'm back where I started. No money, and I'm stealing it out of the Sainsbury's down by the Stour roundabout. But I've realised I couldn't do it anymore, and so I tried to stop on my own. And of course I needed another detox already. Even after 3 days, my drinking was so severe, and a guy had hit me with a sword. Don't know how that come about in the hostel. I had 17 stitches in this shoulder, and I got all this anxiety because I started getting DTs and hallucinations because I'd stopped drinking again without any medication. And I ended up at the bus station in Canterbury, and I asked the guy if he'd let me get on the bus for free to Folkestone, and I'd give him the money when I got a gyro. He said, yeah. I got to Folkestone, I did get a gyro, and I did go and give him the £5. And within a couple of days, I'd got desperate enough to call the hostel, tell them where I was. And they said to me, there's a place called Shepherd House in Folkestone that might be able to help you, up Victoria Grove. If you get in there, she said they'll give you a little flat. They'll give you some group therapy, and maybe if you take it upon yourself, you'll get yourself to some meetings, and maybe you might just live. So that's what I did. At first they wouldn't let me in because I'd had a beer during the day because I was feeling so bad, and I had to blow into a machine, and it showed that I'd had a drink. And they said to me, well, if you really want this place and you really want to get sober and you really want to turn your life around, you'll be back here tomorrow. You'll blow into this machine and it'll be zero. That night I slept rough because I didn't have any more money. All I had to my name was the camera, the Pentax camera that East had given me, and a pair of socks and pants and a couple of other bits and pieces in a plastic bag. That's all I had. And I went back the next day, blew zero, and they let me in. And the next morning I was in my little apartment, and a woman called Lorraine rang the doorbell, and she said to me, if you don't go to AA, you're going to die, Paul. 100%. I was 36. I've been drinking, what, 20 years probably. I was fucked. I was absolutely bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt, mentally bankrupt, physically bankrupt, principally bankrupt in all areas. I just did not know what to do. So I went to a meeting down in Hive on a Saturday night, and I never looked back, and I stayed in recovery. And I built my relationship back up with my brothers, and that's where it all started back in 2007. And I loved getting speakers for meetings. I didn't have my licence back at the time. I was on a 10-year ban, so when I got some service in the rooms, and the rooms needed speakers, just like what I'm doing now with you, it was my job to go and get people like me to come and speak. Other AAs, other people that were drinking, other recovering alcoholics that would come and share their experience, strength and hope. Just like what I'm doing now, or trying to do now. And I loved it. I'd get trains, I'd get buses. I went as far as Devon on a train once to go and get someone to come and do a share in Folkestone. I got famous musicians to come to Folkestone. One of them came twice, a very famous guitarist. And that's where my recovery was. But that's where your recovery starts, not inside the meetings. Your recovery starts outside. When you ain't got nothing to fall back on. You ain't got no alcohol or drugs to fall back on to change the way you feel anymore. So AA taught me how to live without a drink, a day at a time. And all I needed to do was stay away from that very first drink or drug, and I'd be okay, one day at a time. And here I am 18 years later, which is, I couldn't believe it's 18 years. It could be yesterday, it could be this morning, really. And I haven't had a drink or a drug in all that time. But there's been some more trauma. When I was in Shepherd House, I got with a girl called Debbie. I say girl, woman, from Edinburgh, Scottish woman, and we got in a relationship whilst she was still in Shepherd House and I'd moved down to Marine Crescent. And there is a reason I tell you this story, by the way. Me and Debbie got together. Debbie stayed sober for 2 years, and then one Wednesday night she picked up a drink, and I had the most horrendous phone calls for the next 3 days. And I remember I was working up in Canary Wharf, and the phone just wouldn't stop. It was, you know, a really, really drunk Scottish woman ain't nice to be listened to all day long, I tell you that for nothing. And that's no disrespect to Scottish people, by the way. And on the Saturday the phone went quiet, and I was going down with the keys to open up the meeting at the Hive, and Debbie called me, and I'll never forget what she said. She just said to me, I can't give you unconditional love, and you won't get here in time. I've got a scar around my neck. And I listened to her choke. The phone then went dead. I called the police and said I think someone might be trying to take their own life. And that was that. And then whilst the meeting was going on, I got a phone call, or a friend got a phone call, asking if Paul Daniels was there, and it was the police, to say that they'd been to Debbie's house and they found her unresponsive. She'd hung herself, which I knew anyway. So I'd say that's probably the most traumatic experience I had before, during and after drinking. But the reason I share it is because I never picked up a drink or a drug. I didn't pick up a cigarette either. I'd stopped drinking 1 year after I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking, and I didn't even have a cigarette. You know what? I was going to go and get some fags from the Grapevine off licence. Why would I have needed to go to the Grapevine off licence to get my fags? I knew exactly what was coming. I would have gone there, and I've got a bottle of JD to go with it. So I didn't go and get any cigarettes. So bless her heart. And Debbie did that on the 19th of December. So that's, you know, with the stuff that goes on with Bruce, I have a shit Christmas most years. But it's getting better. And I didn't pick up a drink. My friends from AA rallied round, and I just threw myself back into it, you know. And but there's two thorns that have been in my side throughout my life, and that is romance and finance have been a fucking nuisance for me. I'm not blaming it on my mum, but I wasn't really given any life skills, so I had to try and learn that myself. And plenty of people in the rooms have tried to help me and teach me to be financially stable and soluble and whatever you want to call it. And my relationship stuff has never been any good. I've never been any good at saying yes. Oh, fucking hell. Happy life, happy wife. What is it? Happy wife, happy life. I'm no good at that stuff. Doesn't seem to be anyway. Maybe it's changing, but so all in all, my recovery has been a blessing. I would say my worst day sober has never been as bad as my best day drinking. That's for sure. And I would say that I'm fortunate enough to be in a position to do this video. And the reason I'm doing this video is because I'm in a position to be an adult child of an alcoholic, which means I've got a threefold experience-based life. So I can identify with the drinker, the abuser, because I can say it's an abuser because that's what it is today. I can identify with the drinker. I can identify with the non-drinker, and I can also identify with the child, of course. And that's why I've got such a bond with Frederick, the one whose fit picture you saw yesterday. Never in my life have I been in a position to be unselfish, to be non-self-centered, and to be in a position to put somebody else before me. And so when I got with Lelet a couple of years ago, I've always been very impulsive. I've tried to say that I was spontaneous, but it's been impulsive, and impulsiveness comes from trauma, by the way. So I've had a wonderful couple of years with Lelet and Frederick, but Lelet and me are no longer in a relationship of sorts. We are very, very good friends, but I still have a bond and a relationship with Frederick. I see him maybe once a week. I've kind of got a little bit of a relationship going with his Norwegian papa as well. But Frederick doesn't see him very much, and so I can identify where Frederick is, and I know that it's hard for a little 8-year-old boy, and whose mum and dad have divorced, and there's no dysfunction really, or maybe a little bit, but I haven't been part of it, and I think you could see it in Frederick's eyes when he looked at me that I'm all right. And I think where I'm going to get to now and just finish up with where I am today, and that is that the last 14 months have been very bad. I suffered with some clinical depression, which is not the first time, but this was the worst time. And I isolated a lot. That's why I'm now 16.5 stone. Through no exercise, eating like I've been eating, and not working for 14 months. It's been quite bad, and my health's not good either, because I think being overweight doesn't bring you some good stuff, and also I've got a problem with a couple of other bits and pieces, but not life-threatening, not that I know about at the moment, but they're bad enough for me. I've got some very dear friends now, inside and outside the fellowship, in Norway and not in Norway, and around the world, in fact. And I've been to a meeting whilst I've been here, so I've made some friends in Vietnam too. I'm struggling to find any more words to say anymore, but what I'd like to say is that I hope this video, a lot of people have identified with it. That's my hope. My experience with alcohol was very bad. My strengths, I think, have been, I think anybody that can put down a drink and get through all that stuff and then come and share about it, it makes you a stronger person. But what we find out in the rooms or in a 12-step program is that A helps B helps A. So by me sharing this today, all of it, my truth, there's a lot more, by the way, I just had to skip over it, is that I'm constantly reminded, the more I share my experience with others, in the hope that it's going to help somebody else, either with alcohol, with any kind of addiction, or with some kind of dysfunction in the family home, then my day's been all right. And at the same time, it helps me. And I still ain't found out what bird that is yet. I think it's a big one, but I don't know what it is. You have noticed I've made some shitty posts. Well, they're not shitty posts on Facebook, and my Facebook comes to an end pretty shortly. In AA, we try not to talk about politics for obvious reasons. Not just that it can spoil the party, but it can bring about or nudge you to get a little bit angry or resentful, which we try to stay away from in the fellowship, because resentments and anger are not very good for those that are in recovery, and that's why we try to stay away from it. All I've done is try to keep myself aware, because I've been on a very long journey of self-awareness, because I needed to, because things kept on happening to me and I needed to find out why. And by being in the rooms and being part of a 12-step program, I found the courage to keep having a look. I didn't want to keep putting these triggers in boxes and putting them on the shelf, because the shelf's still there. And every time a trigger comes, the box would open and out comes the shit again. So, from my experience, is if you can talk to somebody about your problems, especially those that have walked before you, then sit and have a little listen. Does you no harm. And in the rooms of AA, we also say that everything is suggested. The best advice is to not give advice, but if you've got anything to give, then share your experience. And the best thing with my friends is, and I'm going to finish on this, the best thing with my friends is that everything that they tell me is true. It's honesty. And they'll tell me what worked and what didn't work, and that's been my saviour, I tell you, but I don't always listen. And honesty is the best policy too with everything. And I had to get honest with myself, otherwise nothing was going to work. I'm not too sure where else I've told this story to, but I'm going to go now, and I hope some people get the message. I'm not too sure what else to say apart from thanks to all those that are going to watch this video, and thanks to all those that have stuck by me. But this ain't about me. This is about whoever's listening to this video and get something from it. And I just wanted to share it so that can happen. Anyway, I'm going to go now. My last day here tonight, my last night here tonight, and I'll get a flight back to where am I going? Norway. I go back to Norway tomorrow. All right. Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening. If you do.